how did you get into music?
So my earliest introduction to playing music was when I was about 5, I think. I started playing piano, and that was the instrument I played for a long time, but it didn't really, like, nothing clicked. It wasn't something I loved doing. The scope of what I was studying was so limited, just the method books that my teacher was giving me, and no input from me on what I like or what I wanted to be playing. So it was not something I really loved to do. And then when I was 11, I switched to drums, and then it kind of clicked, and it became something that I really, really had a passion for, and wanted to pursue and wanted to get better at and play with other people. And then that's kind of, in terms of a musician, that's kind of my progression. In terms of listening, my parents kind of always listened to music. My mom, she liked a lot of like Motown stuff. My dad is a huge Beatles fan, so there was always different kinds of music playing in my house from an early age. So that was, in terms of listening, that's kind of where it started for me.
Okay. So, how did you get into your style of drumming? So, I guess before we answer that question, how do you describe your style of drumming? Because I know what I think, but
I would say like mostly funky. Other influences, some jazz influence, some rock influence, a little bit of influence from like Latin music. I studied some Latin rhythms when I was at Humber, so that's that. I wouldn't say that's like a heavy influence, but it does kind of make its way in sometimes. So yeah, funky with
okay.
drawing from other influences. But how I got into the funky music was, I remember someone I played in a band with in high school gave me a Soul Live album, and that's kind of what got me started. It was No Place Like Soul, so
Okay.
that's, I wouldn't list that as one of my favorite Soul Live albums by any means, but it was a great intro. And then from Soul Live, I got into bands like Lettuce, and Dumpsta Funk, and then started going back and checking out some of their influences, some of the like, New Orleans stuff like the Meters, Tower of Power,
Mm.
West Coast kind of stuff. We have a great drummer, David Garibaldi, who kind of like pioneered the linear funk kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, did you develop the style? Did you get into that funky style through listening to them and sort of self-teaching? Were there mentors? Were there people to teach you this sort of thing, or did you find it yourself?
Uh, a little bit of both. When I was in high school, I studied with a guy named Vito Rezza. He was a fusion drummer, so we kind of worked on some groove stuff and some phrasing ideas. And then I studied with other guys who were like more like jazz guys, a guy named Jim Blackley,
Mhm.
Bob McLaren. But yeah, Paul DeLong, I would say, was stylist, like in terms of stylistically, was the closest to that kind of stuff. And I would say was one of my favorite teachers. I studied with him for a year at Humber,
Mhm.
and I think the reason that he was such a great teacher was like he's a like ridiculously good drummer, but I like the way he teaches because it's very applicable. He'll give you like a certain, whether it's like a sticking pattern or a phrasing idea or like a kind of groove. He'll give you that, but then he'll
Mhm.
also give you a play along track that's like the right tempo to practice that stuff. So you're getting the concept, but you're also being shown how to apply it like in a musical context instead of just like working out a pattern.
That's very cool because I know a lot of teachers just sort of want you to hammer it out without the rest of the band, I guess is the way
Yeah,
to phrase it, but that doesn't feel right, I guess. You know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the reason I'm asking is because we'll get into it again in a little bit, but learning to play it particularly when it's sort of outside of the, classical or sort of mainstream stuff, finding your own musical voice becomes a bit of a challenge. And I think a lot of people feel that, like they don't want to play classical drums, they don't want to play, your traditional jazz drums or rock and roll or whatever. and trying to find your own voice feels very, very daunting, but you've just laid out a bunch of ways to.
And I actually had a good conversation yesterday about finding your own voice with someone named Rob Christian, a saxophone player,
Mhm.
and it was just he was saying like it's interesting um, if you take things from like masters of their instrument who are not necessarily like the trendy ones or like the ones who are in the spotlight, because you know if you play like someone that everyone knows and loves, then you sound like that guy. But if you're
Yeah.
kind of learning from somebody who is on the same level of mastery but maybe is a little bit less obscure and less people know, then I mean, yeah, it kind of helps you have more of your own voice because it's not as recognizable.
Yeah, and you're not just trying to make that sort of mainstream sound, you're trying to find your own voice and then turn that to mainstream.
Yeah, totally.
If you like what you just saw, please give us a like, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell so you can see all the notifications, and leave a comment. It really helps us out, and I really want to know what you guys want to hear. Welcome to the Unbowed family. We are going to be doing some amazing things in the future, and if you want to help us grow, consider subscribing, consider becoming a Patreon. Everything helps us out. We will see you in the next one. I absolutely love you all. As the man said, onward and upward to greater glory. Together, we are unbowed.